I'm James Heaney, and this is Brief News Brief. Our first story is fake news. It's not fake, it's a story about news that is fake. You know what I'm talking about. Propaganda clickbait that you see up on your Facebook wall. 66% of Facebook users admit that they get their news primarily from Facebook. They get it from their Facebook wall. Now, I get it. It's convenient. You can keep up with your Uncle Gene at the same time you keep up with Bernie Sanders. But that's the laziest way that you can keep in touch with the world. Mark Zuckerberg admits that before the election he realized there was a problem with fake news on Facebook. He was afraid to bring anything up or do anything about it for fear of backlash from the conservatives because, most of them, and I'm not saying all of them, but most of the fake news was coming from conservative outlets. Now, what happens is somebody sees a headline that is clickbait and they read it and they're like, Hillary Clinton has eaten 12 babies. And they're like, that can't be true. They click on the article and the article pops up a web page and they notice that below the headline, there's a whole bunch of words written down. And they're like, I can't believe it's true. They close the thing and then they share it. Because they need you to know. It's important. People need to know. Well, that's how these things spread like wildfire. Because nobody's checking sources, and these stories are completely fabricated. They are post-truth, which is a new word. You might not be that familiar with it. In fact, it is a new word that Oxford Dictionary is adding in this year to our vocabulary. Past words that they've added were selfie, vaping. This year's is post-truth. Let me give you the definition. Relating to or denoting circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotional and personal belief. Now, it's a pretty complicated definition. Let me give you my interpretation of it. It is fabricated stories that instead of telling you true facts are telling you how to feel. That is their objective. It's not to make you know facts. It's to make you feel something. And then you spread that feeling to someone else. And that is the cycle of fake news. Brief News Brief is not fake news. We're hardly an accredited journalists in the first place. Don't tell anybody, I never even studied journalism. But nonetheless, we're not going to fabricate stories. We are going to be pulling stories from other places like this, and it's going to be brought in from accredited news sources. But by no means are we telling you that this is all of the facts. In fact, this would be, my preference is for you to use this show as a jumping point for you to say, I want to learn more, and then read from accredited sources. There are tumultuous times in the Trump transition team. There's infighting, people are getting fired, heads are rolling. And the first on the chopping block is Chris Christie and anyone associated to him, going as far away from him as Mr. Rogers. Now, this is all being orchestrated by Jared Kushner, who is Trump's son-in-law. He married Ivanka Trump. I'm sure it was a great wedding. Now, he's upset with Chris Christie because he was a federal prosecutor that sent his father to jail. So that's pretty bad, so he's out of here. And he promised that he wouldn't burn any bridges on his way out because he doesn't get involved in that kind of scandal. And Mr. Rogers, he was someone that oversaw a report about the Benghazi incident. And at the end of this report, it was decided that it was not a scandal. So he is also out of here. There's clearly a lot of score settling going on in the Trump transition team. Side note, am I the only one that thinks Trump looks like John Madden? It's time to talk about the here, the now, and the future. A week has passed since the shock of this historic presidential election, and the dust is settling, and we're moving on with our lives. John Oliver recently said, we can't let ourselves forget that this is not normal. When you wake up, you need to remind yourself that Donald Trump isn't a normal president. Well, I love John Oliver, but I disagree with that. This is normal. This is our new normal. And we're eventually going to get into this pattern where we can't help it. You're going to become numb to it. You're going to be the pattern of your life. So you need to make patterns that are stronger. You need to stay engaged. Because like it or not, You're in this world, and you might be leaving a grocery store and then getting arrested for protesting. And look at the interview we had yesterday. That was a true interview, by the way. And John Oliver says it can't be normal. But you know what? Then he takes 2 months off. Come on, John Oliver. Maybe the new normal shouldn't be you taking off so much time from work when we need to hear your voice. The polls are in. Gloves beat mittens. I guess those paws don't hold up to the fingerless dexterity of gloves. And secondly, would you rather X-ray vision or invisibility? The answer ended up being invincibility, which was not the question. We don't have any invincibility, so you get nothing. And finally, would you rather focus on planet preservation or space exploration? Which turns out it's space exploration, which is bringing us to one of our new polls tonight. We've decided that space exploration is important, but now I need to know what specifically about space exploration do you think is important. Next, where do you get your news from? And finally, what's a good nickname for Kim Jong-un? Recently in China, they have banned the searches of Kim Fatty the Third or Kim Fat, which are no longer allowed to be searched. So what we want to do is get some new nicknames from you guys. So this is going to be different than our usual polls. Instead, I want you to make up a nickname for Kim Jong-un and put it in our Twitter feed. And I'm going to choose my favorite 4, and that will be the next vote we have. Now, you might be asking, how did invincibility win against X-ray and invisibility? The answer is because on Twitter, where votes are actually counted, people voted most for that. So if you want your voice heard, you need to tweet @BriefNewsBreak.